with the question. So that question was for the sitting of, it was November, September 2021. It was question number 4, part B. It was question number 4, part B. We had done part of the question. So we proceed. We did the Roman letter 1. We computed the breakpoint, isn't it? Then Roman letter 2, you are dealing with the Roman letter 2. But on that Roman letter 2, I suspect we only calculated the cost of equity. Yeah, so cost of equity, there were 2, retained earnings and ordinary shares. So now we proceed to the next one. We proceed with the next one and see how it will be able to be operated. So let me now go to the cost of the preference share. The next one should be the cost of the preference share. So to compute the cost of the preference share, cost of the preference share is supposed to be given by KB. So KB should be equal to dividend divided by PO minus the flotation cost. Then we express it as a percentage. So that cost of the preference share, it will be the dividend. You can see where they gave us the preference share capital. So new preference shares will be issued at 11% coupon rate. The bar value of each share is supposed to be 100. So dividend is computed on the bar value. So our dividend will be 11% of 100. Our dividend will be 11% of 100, which is the same as 11. Yeah. Then when you continue on the same, they say that new preference shares will be issued at par. That means the current market price is also the same as the bar value. When you are given a flotation cost of 5 shillings. So now we can compute our KB. Dividend is 11. PO has been given as the bar value, which is 100. To subtract the flotation cost of 5 shillings, express it as a percentage. Then express that value as a percentage. That now should be the cost of the preference share. That should be able to give you the cost of the preference share. Dividend is computed on the bar value. The dividend will be computed on the bar value. Then now we express it in that manner. So now, after the cost for the preference share, we should also now compute the cost of the debenture. The next one will be the cost of the debenture. We should also be required to calculate the cost of the debenture. So to compute the cost of the debenture, to come up with the cost of the debenture, it has been given to you where they said new debentures can be sold at a coupon rate of 13%. So the debenture will be issued at par. So those debentures are irredeemable because they have not given us the maturity period. When the maturity period is not provided, it means it is irredeemable debenture. So the cost of the debenture, will be the same as KT. it will be given by interest, then 1 minus the corporate tax. We divide by the current value for the debenture. We subtract the flotation cost. Then we express it as a percentage. We express that value as a percentage. So interest is computed on the par value. You can see they said the coupon rate is 13%. Then the debenture will also be issued at what? At par. So interest is calculated on the par value. It will be 13%. It will be 13% of the par value. The par value has not been given. So that is supposed to be the value for the interest. The par value has not been given. You simply get 13% of the par value. Then 1 minus the corporate tax. The corporate tax, they gave you 13%, which is the same as 0.3. Like that. Then we divide by the current value for the debenture. They said it was issued at par. So you see that part. So this current value for the debenture is also the par value. Like that. It's also the par value. The question had no flotation cost. Then we express it as a percentage. So the par value was not given. So they will simply be able to cancel off like that. They were issued at par. Interest is calculated on their par value, but the figure has not been given. If it was there, the group would have done it, cancel. So finally, we shall just be left 13%, then 1 minus 0.3 to get now what will be our KG. The par value itself was not given. If it was there, then we could have calculated and gotten the value on the basis of that. But now it was not provided. So it should now give us around what percent? Yeah. So that is, it is giving us 9%. Exactly 9.1. Yeah. So that was now the cost of the debenture. When the figures are not given, but they have specified the bar value, then we simplify it in that order. So that now will be the cost of the debenture. Then after that, we should now come up with our WMCC, because the question needed you to get the weighted marginal cost of capital. So to get that weighted marginal cost of capital, I will do some simplified information in relation to that. We need to come up with some simplified information in relation to that area, in relation to that question. So we can get some simplified information for that. So what we do, you can now check what we calculated in Roman letter 1 about the breakpoint. So there was equity. There was equity. So under equity in the Roman letter 1, you can remember the breakpoint. The breakpoint was for the retained earnings. We got how much? It was 40 million. Then also remind me what we calculated as the cost for the retained earnings, KR. 12.2. So KE also reminds me what was the cost for the ordinary share. 13.03. Then after that, there is now also the preference shares. There is also the preference shares. So preference shares, it had no breakpoint, but we have calculated KB for that. So what was KB for the preference shares? 9.1. Yeah, we calculated today the cost for the preference shares. It was 11.58. Then when it comes to the debentures, also debentures have no breakpoint, but you have calculated KB. Your image 9.1. So that information we already have it. I'm simplifying it so that you can answer the question how to get a WMCC. Then also we need to know the range. We also need to come up with the range. So the range for that, the first one normally starts from 0. It normally starts from 0 to the lowest breakpoint, in case there are more than 1. But here it was only 1. That breakpoint was how much? 40 million. So the first one will be from 0 to 40 million. Then the second one should be from above the 40 million to the next highest if it was there. But now, in case it is not there, go to the projects. Are you able to see the Roman Catholic projects? We add that total cost for the projects. We add that total cost for the projects. Are you able to see project B, W, X, Y, and Z? When you add the initial cash outlay, they should add up to around how much? Just add that initial cash outlay and see it is giving us 70 million. Yeah, so we shall be coming up with that information. So this is just a summary of what we are going to do. It means we are going to compute 2WMCC because of the breakpoint that occurred under equity. Remember, a breakpoint is simply where a given source of finance is exhausted so that you go to the next source of finance. So equity has 2 components, retained earnings and what? Ordinary share. So when we are computing our WMCC, when it is between 0 and 40, that is the same as 40 million and what? And below. So you will be using the retained earnings. But if it happens to be above the 40 million, we have exhausted the retained earnings. It means we go to the ordinary shares. That's now how it will be able to work. But these others, they had no breakpoint. They will apply to all of them. This one had no breakpoint. This one had no breakpoint. So it will work. It will be computed to all of them. So our WMCC, it is supposed to be given by weight of equity, cost of equity, weight of the preference shares, the cost of the preference shares, the weight of the debenture, the cost of the debenture, which must always be after the tax. So this is now our WMCC. How we shall be able to come up with the WMCC. To get the weighted marginal cost of capital, we simply get the weight of equity multiplied by the cost of equity, weight of the preference share multiplied by the cost of the preference share, and also the weight of the debenture multiplied by the cost of the debenture. Then we come up with that analysis. So the first one is from 0 to 40 million. My first one will be from 0 to 40 millions. The first one starts from 0 to 14 millions. So to get the WMCC, we know the weight for equity. We had used it before. You remember the weight for equity? It was 15 million plus 45 million divided by 100. It was 0.6. Now remember the 0.6. That's now my weight of equity. It will be 0.6 like that. So this one is referring to equity, but this one is referring to the ordinary share. Yeah. So here I'm talking about equity, but this place there is retained earnings are not ordinary share. So my KE here is not ordinary share, it is just equity. So I hope you recall that. On my WSEC, this part is equity. But under equity, we have how many components? 2. Retained earnings and the ordinary share. So when under equity is 40 million and below, we use the retained earnings. When it is above 40 million, because the breakpoint for retained earnings is 14, when it is above 40 million, we change to the ordinary shares. So here we are from 0 to 40. So we are below 40 million. We use the cost for the retained earnings. So that cost of the retained earnings is 12.1. 12.2 like that. Then, when it comes to the preferentials, I want you to check in the preferentials. Are you able to see up there? Preferential is 15 million. So you can see the 15 millions. 15 million divided by 100. It will be 0.5. It will be 0.5. So the weight for the preferential is 0.15. But the cost for the preferential, remember, it was 11.58. Then we also add the one for the debenture. The proportion for the debenture should be which figure? The proportion for the debenture, you can see the debenture is 25 million. So 25 million divided by 100, the total is 100 million. That will be the same as 0.25. It will be the same as 0.25. So debenture, there was no break point. It will apply to all of them. It is 9.1. So this figure is already after the tax. So don't tax it the way I've indicated up there. It is always after the tax. So we don't tax that figure again. It is already after tax. So we come up with that to give us the WMCC, so that we come up with the WMCC in relation to that. So that should be now our Roman letter, the first one from 0 to 40. So the second one is meant to be the one above 40 millions up to 70 millions. The second one is above 40 million to 70 million. So this one, WMCC, will be. So the weight for equity is still 0.6. But under equity, now we are above 40 million. You see, we are above 40 million. When you are above 40 million, we have exhausted the retained and we change to the ordinary shares, which is 13.03. So for the preference shares, there was no breakpoint. It will apply to all of them. For the preference shares, there was no breakpoint. It will apply to all of them. Like that. Then the next one is 0.25. So also this one had no breakpoint. It will also apply to all of them in that order. Also apply to all of them. Also apply to all of them. So that should be now our Roman letter 2 of the question. How to compute the weighted marginal cost of capital. How we can calculate the weighted marginal cost of capital. So we now go to the Roman letter 3. Roman letter 3, they were asking that Dynasoft Limited has the following potential investment opportunities. So project initial cash outlay and the internal rate of returns are given. So they gave you project BWXY up to Z. Initial cash outlay is given. Also the internal rate of return has been given. So required using investment opportunity schedule. advise on the project to accept and hence determine the firm's optimal capital budget. So what we do at that level, we shall be able now to assess how to rank the projects, So we rank them, we compare the IRR against the WMCC. And a project whose IRR is greater than WMCC will have to be rejected. But sorry, any project whose WMCC is greater than IRR will be rejected because WMCC is the cost. IRR will be the return. Then in the process, we see how to be able to work. So maybe I can first of all check that from letter 4.3 before I go back to the WMCC and explain further. Someone was requesting, so you can let me know where the issue is so that I explain from that level. So maybe I will be able to explain from that point when you let me know the exact specific area. So in that Roman 3, we do it this way to select the project. You will have the project, you will be having the project and the costs, and also the total cost. And apart from the total cost, there is now also the IRR, then WMCC. Then you make the decision from that point. Then you make the decision on that area. We make the decision on the basis of that. So I said we first of all do the ranking. We shall first of all do the ranking. So in the ranking, which project has got the highest IRR? B is the first one. Yeah, so they have been arranged according to the IRR. Yeah, so always rank them. Always rank them on the basis of that. So in your ranking, you start the one with the highest IRR is B. The one with the highest IRR is meant to be B. So that B has an initial cost of 10 million. It has an initial cost of 10 million. So total cost is the cumulative one. Total cost is meant to be, so far there is no other project. So far there is no other project. So it will just remain how much? 10 million like that. So project B has an IRR of what percent? Equal 16%. So we use this total cost to identify the WMCC. We use this total cost to identify WMCC. So this total cost is how much? 10 million. So 10 million is between 0 and 40 million. So what was this WMCC? Between 0 and 40 millions. Sorry? 11 points. So you round it off to 2 decimal places will be 11.33. Yeah, so that is now our WMCC. So IRR is a return. WMCC is a cost. So any project whose IRR will be greater than WMCC, we accept. So this one is accepted because the IRR is greater than WMCC. The IRR is greater than the WMCC because IRR is a return, WMCC is a cost. So when the returns are greater than the costs, we normally accept. But the concept is here, we use the total cost to identify WMCC. We check in the range that we have calculated, but IRR is provided. So that is now for that project B. We go to the next rank. The next rank will be which project? According to IRR, which is W, isn't it? Yeah, so the next one is supposed to be project W. So W has a total initial cost of how much? It is 20 million. So cumulative will be which figure? It will be 30 million. So it has been given an IRR of what percent? 14. So we are using the 30 million to identify the WMCC. So 30 million is still between 0 to 40 million. So which is going to be 11.33. So even that one you accept because IRR is greater than the WMCC because the IRR is greater than the WMCC. Then the next part should be which project? It is meant to be X, isn't it? Yeah, so X has a total initial cost of 10 million. So cumulative should be what? 40 million. The IRR has been given as what? 11. So 40 million is still from 0 to 40 million. It is still between 0 to 40 million, whereby that WMCC is 11.33. So that project will be rejected. That X you indicate reject because IRR is less than WMCC. That one will be rejected because IRR is less than the WMCC. Then the next part is supposed to be project Y. The next part is supposed to be project Y. So when it comes to project Y, it has a total initial cost. It has a total initial cost of 20 million. So cumulative should be which year? It will be 60 million. Then now, what is the IRR for project Y? So 60 million is above 40 to 70. It is above 40 to 70. Above 40 to 70, the WMCC, you got which figure? 11.81. 83. Yeah, so still that one will be rejected. That one will be rejected because the IRR is less than what? The WMCC. Then the next one is supposed to be Z. The next one is supposed to be Z. So for Z, we are given which figure? 10 million. So the total cost must be what? It is 70 million, isn't it? Yeah, so 70 million is still between 40 to 70. So it is IRR is given as 8. So this is still 11.83. So that project is also rejected. That project is also rejected. The project at that point is also meant to be rejected. So now after that, the question was asking you to advise on which project to accept and also determine the optimal capital budget. So far, we have accepted project B and W. We have rejected X, Y, and Z. But we also need to come up with the optimal capital budget. What will be the optimal capital budget? Optimal capital budget is normally the total cost of all the accepted projects. When they are mentioning about, so we can write something about the optimal capital budget. So we can note that the optimal capital budget, the optimal capital budget is the total cost. The optimal capital budget is the total cost of all the accepted projects will be the total cost of all the accepted projects. The total cost of all the accepted projects. i.e., is it 30 million? i.e. 30 million. i.e. 30 million. So it is 10 plus 20, isn't it? We have accepted B and W. So their total cost is 30 million. That is 10 plus what? 20. That's now when it comes to the optimal capital budget. When it comes to the optimal capital budget, you will be required to get the total cost for the accepted project. So some people maybe came into class when you had already started. They were asking about this region, the WMCC. So WMCC is simply the cost of capital of the new funds we want to raise. So we were to summarize some information at this point. We summarize some details at this area. So in our summary, I came to equity. So equity had two components. That was retained earnings and what? Ordinary share. Then we had calculated the breakpoint for the retained earnings, which was how much? It was 40 million. Then for the preference shares, we computed the cost for the preference share. It had no breakpoint. We also computed the cost of the debenture, which also had no breakpoint. So when it came to the summary, when you are calculating WMCC, the range normally starts from 0 to the lowest breakpoint. This question had only one breakpoint, which was how much? The 40 million. That's why we have 0 to 40 million. The next one is normally above now the lowest to the next highest. But now the question had only one breakpoint. That's why I had 40 million. Then this 70 was the total for all those projects. The total for all these projects is what gave me the 70. So when it comes to the WMCC, it is the weight of equity multiplied by the cost of equity, weight for the preference shares multiplied by the cost for the preference share, then the weight for the debentures multiplied by the cost of the debentures. The weights, the 0.6, 0.15, 0.25 are given to you in the capital structure. When you check in the capital structure, debenture is 25 million divided by 100. That's why we are getting the 0.25. The equity, we saw that yesterday, it was 15 plus 45 divided by 100, which gave us 0.6. Then the preference share is 15 divided by the 2, which has given us 0.15. So under equity, equity has two components. 40 million and below, you use what? Retained earnings. That's why in this place I've used 12.2. The rest they will remain because there is no breakpoint. But when it comes to this second one, above 40 to 70, above 40 to 70, we have exhausted the retained earnings. So under equity, we change to the ordinary share. That's why we have the ordinary share at that point. But here we had the retained earnings. The rest are not changing because there was no breakpoint. So that's now the summary I will be able to give. Maybe it will be better if I do another question and see how it will also behave for that level. So let us get another question in relation to that. We can also check another question in relation to that to see how it can be able to assist on that. So the next question. So the next question I want us to deal with. So there is another question for May 2017. May 2017. There is a question number 1, part B. May 2017. There is a question number 1, part B. You check on page 46. We check on page 46. We check on page 46. We check on page 46. So on that page 46, when we check through on page 46, when you check through what is there on page 46, so we check on page 46. So the question reads that when you go through the question, they were saying that Kensel Limited has the following capital structure. Cancer Limited has the following capital structure. So you are given source of capital, where you are given 45% and equity, which is 55%. Then they have given the total. So the management of Cancer Limited forecast the after-tax earnings for the forthcoming year of 2.5 million. The company has been paying 60% of its earnings as dividend, and this payment ratio is expected to continue into the foreseeable future. So the company's present loan commitment will allow it to incur additional leverage according to the schedule presented below. There is from 0 to 500, above 500 to 900, above 900 to and also above. So the company corporate tax rate is 30%. The current market price of the equity share of the company is 12.22 shillings. Sorry. The last dividend on equity share was paid at 2.2 per share, and the expected growth rate is 5%. So new equity shares can be sold at a flotation cost of 10% of the issue price. Then Cancer Limited has the following investment opportunity for the coming year. So they gave us the projects. There is project A, B, C, D, and E. The now required amount in shillings at which the breaks in the WMCC of the capital will occur. Then also the weighted marginal cost of capital for each, and also IRR for project A and C. Then also advice. So when you advise, we come up with this part. You can see how we shall be able to advise for that. So I will give you a short break for those who are going for the prayers. Then after that, then we proceed on with the question. Let us have a break, because when I start, we must finish continuously. So for those who are going for the prayers, you can have a short break for that before we proceed. So we now start with the Roman letter 1, where we compute the amount in shillings at which breaks in the marginal cost of capital will occur. So to compute the break point, when you want to come up with the break point, so the break point is supposed to be given by amount to raise. Supposed to be given by amount to raise divided by the weight. We divide by the weight. So when you want to compute a break point, it will simply be given by the amount to raise. We divide by the weight of that component. So the break point for this one, we start with the one for equity. We start with the one for equity, and the one for equity is meant to be the retained earnings. So we start with the one for equity. So under equity, it should be the retained earnings. It should be the retained earnings. So to get the amount for the retained earnings, I want you to check after the loan, after the issue to do the sources of capital. When you check at the sources of capital, you have been given that the management of Kensal Limited forecast that after-tax earnings for the forthcoming year to be 2.5 million. But the company has been paying 60% of its earnings as what? Dividend. So they will be retaining what percent? We get 40% of the 2.5 million. So retained earnings will be 40% because they have been paying out 60%. They have been paying 60% as dividend. So they retain 40%. So you get 40% of the profit after tax, the 2.5 million. we get 40% of the 2.5 millions. So this should give us 1.1. Exactly 1.1. 1 point. Just 1 million like that. Yeah, so that is now the amount to raise from the retained earnings. So the break point for that, now amount to raise from the retained earnings is 1 million like that. Then we divide by the weight. So retained earnings is part of equity. You can see the source of capital. Equity is carrying what percent? 55%. So retained earnings is part of equity. So we use 0.55 as the weight. The 55% is the same as 0.55. So that now give you the break point in relation to the retained earnings. It will be able to give you the break point in relation to the retained earnings, which is supposed to be around how much? 1 point. Yeah, so we can round it off just 1.82 million. That's now the break point for the retained earnings. So there was no amount to raise from the ordinary share, because they continued and said that the company has, then they continued to say that the company's present loan commitment, so there is no ordinary share. So equity, it was only for the retained earnings. So now we go to the long-term debt, because we only compute a break point where they have specified the amount to raise. We only compute a break point where they have specified the amount to raise. So the only other place they have commented is the loan amount. So we now go to the long-term debt. We also check the one for the long-term debt. We also compute for the long-term debt. Long-term debt. So long-term debt, there are 3 of them. The first one is the 9% debt. The first one is the one for the 9% debt. The 9% debt. So 9% debt, you see the amount is 0 to what? To 500. So the break point for this one, the break point for that one will be the 0.5 million. The 500,000 will be the same as 0.5 millions. Then we divide by the weight for that. You see up there the long-term debt, the weight is what percent? The weight for the long-term debt, you can see the 45%. So 45% will be the same as 0.45 like that. 0.45 in that order. So that will give you the break point in relation to the 9% debt. In relation to the 9% debt. In relation to the 9% debt. So that one is giving us how much? 1.1 million. Yeah, so the second one is the one for the 11% debt. 11% debt. So the one for 11%, they are saying it is from where to where? 500,000 to 900. That amount is the same as how much? The difference is 400. So to get the break point for that, to compute the break point for that level, so they are in the same source of finance. They are in the same source of finance. So I get cumulative. I get the cumulative. So before I compute for that, I must first of all include the one of the 9%. The one for the 9% was 0.5 million. Then now I add the 0.4 million to make it 900. To make it, it should be cumulative because they are within the same, they are also using the same proportion. So that you divide by 0.45 like that. So when I go to the one for 11%, I must also include the one for the 9%. So how much do we get for that? It is exactly 2 million. Exactly 2 million. So someone is asking, where did we get the 0.45? Mnajua mahali tumepata 0.45. Go to the sources of capital. Check the source of capital. Are you able to see the sources of capital? There is long-term debt. Are you able to see the long-term debt? Are you able to see the long-term debt? Then there is equity capital. So you remember how we got the one for the equity capital? Yeah, so check on that basis. The 0.45 is the same as the 45 divided by 100, because the two of them, they were adding up to 100. Also, you remember we had used the 0.55. That is also where it was coming from. So we cannot be able to compute for the one for the 13%. You can see the one for 13%. It is 900 and what? Above. So they have not specified the above. When they have not specified, it is not possible to compute the breakpoint. But if they could have specified, I could have started with 0.5 plus 0.4, then also plus now the one they have specified to give you a breakpoint for that. So those who are the breakpoint, we only calculate a breakpoint where they have specified the amount to do what? To raise. So that's now all for the Roman letter 1. We cannot be able to calculate for the one for the 13%, because the one for the 13%, they are talking about 900 and above. So that above has not been identified. So that's now the summary on how to get the breakpoint. There are 3 of them. So that's now our Roman letter 1. That will be our Roman letter 1. Where you are to get the breakpoint. So we go to the Roman letter 2. Roman letter 2 is where you compute the weighted marginal cost of capital in each of the intervals between the breaks. In each of the intervals between the breaks in the MCC schedule. So let us now check how to go about that. So we start by computing the cost of capital for each source of finance. We start by computing the cost of capital for each source of finance. We start by computing the cost of capital for each source of finance. We start with the cost of equity. We start with the cost of equity. We start with the cost of equity. So under the cost of equity, the first one should be the retained earnings. The first one should be cost of the retained earnings. The cost of the retained earnings. So cost of the retained earnings is supposed to be given by KR. So KR should be given by DO in the brackets of 1 plus G. We divide by PO, then we also add G in that manner. So when you want to compute the cost for the retained earnings. So when you check over in the question, after that loan amount, they say that the company's corporate tax rate is 13%. Then the current market price of the equity share of the company is given as 22. Then the last dividend on the equity shares was paid at how much? Yeah, so our dividend per share is 2.20. Then 1 plus G. G is the constant growth rate, and the expected growth rate is given as what percent? 5% will be 0.05. We divide by PO. PO is the current market price, which is 22. So divide by 22, then you will also add 0.05. Then that figure, express it as a percentage. That value, express it as a percentage to give you the cost of the ordinary retained earnings. Give us the cost for the retained earnings. When you express it as a percentage, it is given around 10.5, 15.5. Yeah, so that is now the cost for the retained earnings. We also compute the cost for the ordinary share. We should also come up with the cost of the ordinary share. We should also be able to compute the cost of the ordinary share. So cost of the ordinary share is the same as the one for the retained earnings, but now there will be the flotation cost. But now it will be having the flotation cost. So KE will now be the cost for the ordinary share, but the same details for the retained earnings will apply. The only difference, now there will be flotation costs. So it will be 2.201 plus 0.05 divided by PO. PO is 22 minus the flotation cost. We minus the flotation cost. So when you check at that same area, after the growth rate of 5%, they say that new equity shares will be sold at a flotation cost of what percent? 10% of the issue price. So it will be 10% of 22. The issue price is the 22 shares. Then also add 0.05. It is 10% of the issue price. Issue price is our PO, the current market price. They were issued at 22 at that level. So also express that figure as a percentage. Also express that value as a percentage. Also express that value as a percentage. So that should give you around what percent? 16. 16.67. Yeah, so that is now the cost for the ordinary share. So the other one should be the cost for the long-term debt. The next one should be the cost of the long-term debt. The next one is the same as the cost of the long-term debt. When it comes to the cost of the long-term debt, cost of the long-term debts. So for this one, it is the same as the debenture. So KD is supposed to be given by interest 1 minus the tax rate. current value for the debt minus the flotation cost. We normally express it as a percentage. Normally express it as a percentage. So that KD is the same as after tax cost of the debt. After tax cost of the debt. That KD is the same as after tax cost of the debt. So it should be given by this part the same as before tax. Before tax cost of the debt. Then now we multiply by 1 minus the tax. So KD is the same as after the tax cost of the debt. Should be given by before tax cost of the debt. Then we multiply by 1 minus the tax rate. So the cost of the bank loan is the interest rate. So we just get it after the tax. We just come up with the value after the tax. Because we are not given the bar value, we cannot be able to put that. They have given us the loan amount. So there were 3 of them. There were 3 of them. So we compute for all of them. So the first KD is the one of the 9% debt. So just take the 9%, then you tax it like that. You get the value for that. You just take the 9% net of the tax. The second one, KD, is the one for the 11%. You also take 11%, 1 minus 0.3. The third one, the third KD, is meant to be 13%. Then 1 minus 0.3. So for the bank loan or the loan amount, the cost of that loan is simply the interest rate. We only get net of the tax. We just get that value net of the tax. But if it was the debenture, remember how we calculated from the other question, how to get the cost for the debenture. I applied that formula. But now it is the loan amount. You just take that interest rate net of the tax. Just get the interest rate net of the tax. So now after we have computed for each, I want us now to understand more how to get the WMCC. So I want us now to see how we shall get the WMCC after we have that information, comparing to what we did in the previous question. So to compute the WMCC, so to calculate the WMCC, I will have this summary. I need to create this summary. So in our summary, we start with equity. We start off with equity. So under equity, there were 2 items there. We calculated the breakpoint for equity. You remember the breakpoint for the retained earnings? How much was the breakpoint for the retained earnings? 1.82. Then we also calculated KR, the cost for the retained earnings. We also computed KR. KR was what percent? Sorry? 15.5. Then we also computed cost for the ordinary share. Remember the cost for the ordinary share, it was 16.67. Right. So that is now for equity. Also for the long-term debt. Also long-term debt. Also for the long-term debt. So long-term debt, we also computed the breakpoint, the bank loan. The first breakpoint for the bank loan, we got how much? It was 1.1 million. 1 point. Then the second one was, it was 2 million. Then also we have just calculated KD. The first KD, which percent? 6.3. The second KD, you are getting which value? 7 point. Exactly 7.7. Then the third KD, it was 11.1. 11.9. 9.1. Yes. So those are the information that you already have. You had already computed those figures. So when you want now to get the summary from there, when you want to get the summary from that point, we normally get the range from there. So the first one normally start from 0. The first one normally start from 0 to the lowest breakpoint. The first one we start from 0 to the lowest breakpoint. So you have 3 of them. There is 1.82, 1.1, and 2 million. So the lowest is how much? The lowest is 1.1. You see the 3 of them? Yeah, so the range will be, you start from 0 to the lowest breakpoint. So the lowest is 1.1. You don't know your 1.1 million? Yeah, there are 3 breakpoints. We have 1.82, 1.1, and 2 million. So the range normally start, the first one will be from 0 to the lowest breakpoint. From 0 to the lowest breakpoint. Then the second one will now be above 1.1 million to the next breakpoint. 1.1 million to the next breakpoint. So the next one should be 1.82. The next one is 1.82 million. Then the third one should now be above 1.82 to the next highest. So the next highest will be how much? The next highest is 2 million, like that. Then the fourth one should be above 2 million. I want you to get the total of all those projects. So you are given some projects. Yeah, so get the total. There is project A, B, C, D, and E. There is project A, B, C, D, and E. So when you add their cash outlay, they are coming to a total of how much? When you add them together, they should give us a total of how much? It is 3 points. It is 3 million and yeah, so just round it off to 2 decimal places because we are only looking for the range. So it must be 3.26 million. So that information I only present it because I wanted to make it easier for you now to understand how to get the WMCC. So now we want to come up with how to compute the weighted marginal cost of capital. So to compute the weighted marginal cost of capital. So this time there were only 2 sources of finance, equity and long-term debt. There is equity and long-term debt, where it will be the weight of equity, cost of equity, weight of the debt. So KD must always be after the tax. KD must always be after the tax. So when you check under equity, so under equity, anything to do with 1.82 million and below, you will be using the retained earnings because that breakpoint was for the retained earnings. A breakpoint is where a given source of finance is exhausted, you go to the next source of finance. So 1.82 million and below, we use the retained earnings. Anything to do with above 1.82, we change to what? Ordinary shares. That's now under equity. When it comes to the long-term debt, 1.1 million and below, that will be 6.3. Anything to do with above 1.1 to 2 million, that will be 7.7. But above 2 million, you change to what? 9.1. We change to 9.1. So that's now the summary of what you are going to do. So we start with this first one. We start with this first one, which is from 0 to 1.1. We start with the first one, which is meant to be from 0 to 1.1 million, like that. From 0 to 1.1 million. So our WMCC, they wait for equity. They wait for equity. So some people, they seem to be getting out of class. They come back to ask questions. So where did I get the 3.26? We discuss hiyo kitu for a long time. Na nikauliza kila mtu add. So when you get out of the class, make sure that you also take away with your earphones. Yeah, because online, I know you can even go to cook and then come back after that, isn't it? Yeah, so the 3.26, I explained and I asked everyone to add. Now I can add or compare. So me, I didn't have a calculator, so I don't know how they got the 3.26. Mulipata aje 3.26. Yeah. They added the total for project A, B, C, and what? D and E. So make sure that you stay in class up to the end. So don't leave the class, then come back to ask questions. Because that one I explained for a long time, and we all participated in getting the 3.26. So from 0 to 1.1 to get the WMCC. So they wait for equity. They wait for equity. You can see above there the information for the 15%, 45%, and 55. So they wait for equity. They wait for equity is what percent? 55%. So it will be 0. What? 0.55 like that. Then they would anything to do with 1.82 and below. Anything to do with 1.82 and below, we use the retained earnings. So from 0 to 1.1 is the same as below 1.82. So that one we should be using 15.5 like that. Then when it comes to the long-term debt, you see the long-term debt, the weight is 45%. So 45% is the same as 0.45. But under the long-term debt, you see for the long-term debt, anything to do with 1.1 and below, it is 6.3. So here we are from 0 to 1.1. So under the one for the long-term debt, you apply 6.3. So that figure is already taxed. So we shall not tax again as per my formula there. But that figure is already taxed. So that is now for the one between 0 to 1.1. Between 0 to 1.1 million. So that should be our WMCC. That should be the WMCC for that level. So I can see 11.36. So that is for the first one. That's now meant to be for the first one. So we go to the second one. This particular second one is the one above. 1.1 millions up to 1.82 millions, like that. Above 1.1 millions up to 1.82 millions. So under equity, you can see under equity, we have said that anything to do with 1.82 and below, it is 15.5. But anything above 1.82, that will be 16.67. When it comes to the long-term debt, 1.1 and below, it is 6.3. Above 1.1 up to 2, that will be 7.7. Anything above 2 million, we change to 9.1. So for this one, to compute our WMCC, it is 0.55, but we are still 1.82 and below. So you can see it is from 1.1 upwards, 1.82. So we are still 1.8 million and below. So we are still using 15.5 like that. We are still using the 15.5. Then when it comes to this area, it is 0.45. But now you see under the debt, under the long-term debt, anything to do with 1.1 and below, it was 6.3. But anything above 1.1 to 2 million, you change to 7.7. So this one we are above 1.1, but we are still below 2 million. So we shall change to 7.7 like that. We shall be able to change to 7.7. That's now the one above 1.1 up to 1.82 millions. That's now for the second. We go to the third one. We go to the third one. So the third one should be above 1.82, but up to how much? Up to the 2 millions like that. So this one, to compute our WMCC, to compute the WMCC. So it is 0.55. But remember, under equity, now we are above. You can see we are above what? 1.82. So now we change from the retained earnings to ordinary share, the 16.67, because here we are above 1.82 to 2 million. So under equity, anything to do with 1.82 and below, that was the retained earnings. But now, when it is above 1.82, you change to the ordinary share, which is 16.67. Then we go to the long-term debt. It is 0.45. So under the long-term debt, anything to do with 1.1 up to 2 million, it is 7.7. So we are still above 1.1, but below 2 million. So this one is from 1.8 to 2 million. We are above 1.1, but still below 2 million. So we are still using 7.7. We are still applying the 7.7. So 7.7 is above 1.1, but up to 2 million. 6.3 was 1.1 and below. So we are still applying the 7.7 at that portion. So that's now for the third one. Then finally, we go to the fourth. So the fourth, it is meant to be above 2 millions, but up to 3.26 millions. But up to 3.26 millions. So this one to compute the WMCC. So under equity, anything above 1.82, it should be 16.67. Then this one is 0.45. But now, under the long-term debt, you see 1.1 and below it was 6.3. Above 1.1 up to 2, it was 7.7. Now we are above what? 2. So when you are above 2, we change to 9.1. We change to the 9.1 like that. So that's now the summary of that information. How to compute the WMCC. How to come up with the WMCC for that level. So this information is only necessary for you to come up with this area. But if you can be able to understand how we are moving, there is no need of you presenting this part. I've only presented it to make it easier for you to understand how to compute those values. So that's now our Roman letter 2. So online, I hope it is clear at that point. Some people came to class maybe when they were late, or it was not clear in the first question. So now I hope in this second question, people are comfortable with that area. Are we comfortable with that portion for now? Yeah. So let us now check the Roman letter 3. We can now go to the Roman letter 3. So when it comes to the Roman letter 3, they were asking you to compute the IRR for project A and project C. But first, I will confirm for you how they got the one for B. B, while you were paying what percent? They got 15%, isn't it? So let us confirm how they got that IRR of the 15%. Let us now confirm how they were able to get that IRR of the 15%. So to compute the IRR, when cash flows are the same for a given period of time. So I want us to check that project B first to confirm how they were getting that IRR. So we shall be using the second table, the annuity table. So it is the same as the present value interest factor for the annuity. The present value interest factor for the annuity. So R percent, which we are looking for. R is our IRR that we are looking for. But that particular project B had a project life, economic life of how many years? It is for the 5 years. So we take the present value of the cash outflow, we divide by the annuity. So present value for the cash outflow is the initial cost of the project. Then annuity is the annual cash inflows. Annuity will be the annual cash inflows. So confirm, what is the cash outlay for project B? We have been given 900,000. Then annuity is the annual cash inflows. Are you able to see the annual net cash flow for project B? We have been given 268,484. So I want you to divide the figure you are going to get, round it off into 4 decimal places. I want you to divide the figure you are going to get, we round it off into 4 decimal places. So when you take 900,000, divide by 268,484. When you round it off into 4 decimal places, it will give us which figure? Sorry. 3.3. 2 like that. Yeah, so I want you to go to the annuity table. Annuity table is the second table. Go to the present value tables, check in the second table. So in that second table, that is the annuity table. Go to period 5. In the second table, go to period 5. In that period 5, I want you to move across in that period 5 until you get the figure that we have calculated. Until we get the figure that we have calculated. Then you check up. It falls under what percent? So online, are you able to see the second table? Go to the second table, check in period 5, and move across that particular period 5. Then check up. It falls under what percent? That figure falls under what percent? It is 15%. Yeah, so I hope now you can be able to see how to get the IRR. So simply take the initial cost, divide by the annual cash inflow. The figure you get, you round it off into 4 decimal places. Then the question had given you 5 years. So go to period 5, move across until you get this figure. Once you get this figure, check up. It falls under what percent? So are we okay with that point? Those who are online? Online, are we okay at that point? So now from there, we go to project A. Now we can calculate the IRR for project A. We can now check the one for project A. So for project A, when it comes to project A, so present value, interest factor for the annuity, R%. So project A has got how many years? We're gonna 8 years. So present value for the cash outflow for project A, it was 675,000. Then annual cash inflows, they were able to give us 155,401. So get that figure and round it off into 4 decimal places. Get that figure and round it off into 4 decimal places. Then check up. It falls under what percent? Check up. It falls under what percent? So online, you are getting which percent? Those who are online, you are getting which percent? The one for project A. In class, 16%. Yeah, so it should be 16%. It should be 16%. So now we go to the other one was which project? We now also check the one for project C. We now also confirm for project C. We also confirm what is there for project C. So when it comes to project C, also present value interest factor for the annuity R% for how many years project C? 3 years. It is 3 years. Like that. So present value for the cash outflow, it is 300 and what? 375,000. So this one we divide by 161, 524. Yeah, so your figure will round off into 4 decimal places. So when you check up, It is giving us what percent? Online, when you check up there, project C should give you what percent? Project C should give us 14%. It is giving you 14%. So that's how to compute those IRR. That's now how to compute the IRR. So that should be now your comma letter 3 of the question. The others were given. So the last part of the question, they were saying that using investment opportunity schedule, advise on which project should be what? Accepted. So we follow that procedure like now in the previous question. We follow that procedure like now the one in the previous question. So what you do, you will be having the column for the project, also the cost, then total cost, then IRR, then WMCC. Then you make the decision on that. Then you make the decision on that level. So you rank them first. You start with the one with the highest IRR. Make sure that you rank them. But by coincidence, given this question, the projects have been arranged according to the IRR, isn't it? So the one with the highest is project A. A is the one with the highest. A is the one with the highest. So that total cost for A, you can see it is how much? It is 0.675 million. Then cumulative or the total cost will also be 0.675. So IRR, you have said it is what percent? It is 16%. So we use this total cost to identify WMCC. So 0.675 million, it was the same as from 0 to 1.1. You see under the WMCC? Yeah. The first one was from 0 to where? 1.1, isn't it? Yeah, so when it was 0 to 1.1, what was the WMCC? Because we used this total cost. 7, 11.36. Yeah, so this one we accept because IRR is greater than WMCC. That one we shall accept because IRR is greater than the WMCC. The second rank is the project B, the one with the highest IRR. It is meant to be project B. So project B, it had an initial cost of 0.9 millions. So 0.9 millions plus 0.675. That will give us a total of each figure. 1.575. So the IRR is given us 15. So we use 1.575 to identify the WMCC. You can see the range of above 1.1 up to 1.82. Above 1.1 up to 1.82, it was giving us an WMCC of what figure? 11.99 like that. Yeah, so even this one you accept. You accept because IRR is greater than WMCC. The next round is also project C, the one the next highest IRR. So project C, it is 0.375 millions. So cumulative should now give us which value? 1.1. 1.95. So the IRR is what percent? It is 14%. Yeah, so 1.95, it is the one above 1.82 up to 2 million. You can see the one above 1.82 to 2 million. What was our WMCC for that? Sorry? So even that one we accept that project. So the next round will be project D. So D, it had an initial cost of 0.5625. So cumulative should be which figure? $2.5125. So IRR for project D, it is given as what? It is given as 12. So the 2.5125 is the one above 2 million up to 3 point what? So what was the WMCC for that range? 13.26. So this one will be rejected. Project D is rejected. Project D is rejected. Then finally is project E. Finally, it is project E. So project E, it had an initial cost of 0.75 million. So cumulative, we say it was 3.62. 3 like that. So IRR for this one is 11, but 3.26 the one above. Yeah, so this one is still 13 points. So even project E is rejected. E is also rejected. So the question did not ask about the optimal capital budget. But remember the other question, they had asked you to get the optimal what? Capital budget. So you can add there a paragraph that the optimal capital budget, is the total cost. The optimal capital budget is the total cost of the accepted projects. Is the total cost of the accepted projects. i.e. Is it 1.95? Yeah, i.e. 1.95 millions. Here are the total of projects A, B, and C. Tumekubali A, B, and C. Yeah, so that total cost is 1.95 millions. So that is now for that question. I will still do another 2 questions in our next class before we conclude on that element. So we can stop there for today. When we meet in our next class, which must be on Saturday, I will do at least 2 more questions on the same before we conclude on that. So we can stop there for today.